ask each of them to do a self-introduction, brief, note that please, ladies and gentlemen, brief introduction, and also answer one of the first questions we're going to be posing today. As we know, an enormous amount has been happening in emerging technologies recently and particularly in the last few years. So we are going to look at how is Asia Pacific going to look forward and manage with all of our diversity, with all of our geopolitical differences, with all of our different voices, to work hopefully collaboratively together, perhaps even with, who knows, some sort of unified standards happening. Anything is possible. That's up to these people to present. Where are we going? How are we going to do it? Is it good for society? Is it not good for society? Should we run and hide from the AI robots that are going to come and take our jobs? Whatever it is, today's panel is going to have a little play with those concepts. Some of the questions we're going to be working with are these technologies going to help or not the digital divide? And it's that question that I would like them to respond to as they go in order. I think, shall we have, who would like to go first? I think, Joanna, you might have a little something to say in this area. Over to you.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here today. I'm Professor Johanna Weaver. I'm the Director of the Technology Design Centre at the Australian National University. And I am also Australia's former expert to the United Nations. So I've spent a lot of time in windowless rooms, and I also appreciate the light in this room today. On the question of will the emerging tech revolution lessen or increase the digital divide? We'll dive into that in the panel. Just in terms of a quick response, I think for all of us, this is a question about whether or not we are going to engage to shape the future. Whether or not these technologies shape the future for the better or for the worse, I really believe is up for grabs. And it is the people that are in this room and whether or not and how we engage that will be making the difference into the future. So I'm conscious that I have been instructed, Cheryl, to be very brief. I will stop there.
Okay. Brendan, would you like to have a little go next, please? Hey,
everyone. My name is Fernando Serto. I'm the CTO of Cloudflare for Asia Pacific. Do you guys know Cloudflare? Just a show of hands. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we play a big part into keeping the internet open, secure, and free, and private for everyone, right? So my role in Cloudflare, I come from a very strong cybersecurity background. I happen to have grown up being part of a hacking group in Brazil. And obviously now I work to try and revert all the damage that we've caused over the years and build solutions that, are affordable to everyone or free in a lot of cases. But I work with a lot of our legal and policy and compliance teams to understand not only what we can and can't do from an internet perspective, but also what we should and shouldn't do, right? To make sure that we looking after citizens of pretty much every country, right? My role is I travel across Asia Pacific. I look after 13 countries now. So it's been incredible to see the amount of change. We're talking about emerging technologies and looking into how far behind a lot of countries were a few years ago in Asia Pacific from a tech adoption perspective, and how how much they have leapfrogged into adopting a lot of the tech that has been out for a while, and also the new ones has been just incredible, right? So hopefully we have a good discussion here today, and I'll be around for a few hours after if you guys want to have a chat about anything really. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernanda. Dr. Shabir, can I ask you to not only briefly introduce yourself, but also could you have I think, very important comment on whether you think these emerging technologies will widen or shrink the digital divide from your very unique perspective?
Well, thank you very much, Cheryl, for this question. And before I delve into the introduction part of my answer, I would first like to acknowledge the invitation by the chair of APrIGF, the organizers, and also the very kind partial support that I have received to come here physically by the Global Accessibility Awareness Day Foundation as a speaker. So thank you very much to all of them who made my presence in this hall possible. I am Dr. Muhammad Shabir from Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you may know me sitting in this hall. I work with Internet Society as a board of trustees from 2021 to 2023. I also serve as the coordinator of the IGF Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability. And I am also on the multi-stakeholder group of the APrIGF and other number of other organizations. With regards to the question, consciousness and also being conscious of the time factor, Cheryl, I believe that technically we are going good. And as we witness the advent and introduction of AI into technologies, we see that we are going very well in terms of technological advancements. We don't have any fears. But my question is that are these technologies, as they advance, are we taking everyone aboard or are we leaving people behind? Because nature corrects itself, but the human-made things, they don't, unless humans themselves do so. So my question to you all would be, and I would definitely give you my perspective on that, think about that. Whether people with disabilities that you see around you, are they able to use your website? Are they available? How much capacity are they available in this hall? How much of the people with disabilities would be able to reach at this stage where I am sitting if they were here? And of course, last but not the least, the question is that is it just their people that need these facilities, or could be as many of us age, and as Anju was saying, that some next generation leader would be there to take her place. So as we all age, do someday we may need these technologies or not?
Thank you, Dr. Shabir. I'm wondering, Joanna, if you could delve into some of the challenges from the legal and policy frameworks that we're going to have to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to also pick up on a point that Mohammed made. And this is something really what I'm saying about the agency to shape the future, because I think we often focus on the fact that technology is shaping us. And we forget the fact that humans make technology and that we can make technology differently. And so I think that's a really important point just to emphasize. In terms of the legal and the regulatory frameworks, this is something that my team and I at the Australian National University really focus on. And we're looking at the different trends in the way that governments are looking to regulate technologies. And for a long time, governments didn't regulate, right? There was a perception that they couldn't or that they shouldn't regulate technology. And that really has shifted. We're seeing governments increasingly regulating. And you so often hear the narrative that you have a US-led model, which is, the market leads, technology evangelism, and we'll let the market decide what is right. You have the EU approach, which is largely looking at it from a regulatory perspective, saying, how can we shape these technologies, not via technologists and not by the market, but we're going to shape it via regulation. You have the Chinese approach, which is largely looking at how can the state shape the technologies. And what I think is often missed in this conversation is how our region is engaging to shape technologies. When you look at countries like Taiwan or Singapore or India, they take quite a different approach to those common approaches that people always cite. It is a mixture of tech evangelism. You know, you look at what India has done with digital identity, for example, but also combined with regulation. And I think this is a brand of shaping our future, shaping the future of technology that we as a region really should be very proud of and much more actively engage in shaping the regulations of the future. I also think it's really important that when we're doing that, that we recognize the diversity in our region. And this is something that was touched on in the opening remarks. We have some of the most developed countries, and we also have some of the least developed countries. And we also have a number of countries that have a mix of all of these things within their countries and sometimes within one city. And so for many of us, and I say this as an Australian who's witnessed this many times, for us sitting here and talking about privacy and human rights and security, when for many countries, this is about economic development, it's about, you know, the food that we eat in the future, the fibers that we wear. So I think we need to be looking at the regulatory and legal frameworks in a much broader perspective. And one of the tools my team has developed to do this is a tech policy atlas, which is looking at having a global repository. Where do you go to when you want to know what countries are doing to regulate in this space? So I say that as a little bit of a shameless plug for the tech policy atlas, but also because we built this atlas to be a useful tool for this community. We want you to be using that and to be engaging with it. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about what those regulations should be, but I'll pause and let my colleagues jump in as well.
Fernando, would you have to go?
You know, it's funny, we see a lot of innovation and technology coming out of the US, but the US from a regulatory perspective is one of the most behind countries ever, right? Financial services, for example. The Reserve Bank of India has done a much better job at regulating cashless societies and, you know, cashless payments than the US has ever done, right? I was in the US for Black Hat, which is a cybersecurity conference in Vegas 2 weeks ago, and I was blown away that Apple Pay doesn't work everywhere, right? You go to a restaurant, you can't pay with Apple Pay. I haven't carried a wallet inside Australia for 2 years, right? I have had a digital driver's license from Services New South Wales, and I know that Queensland is rolling that out next month, I believe. So, you know, we have all this technology that is, you know, coming out of the US, out of a lot of tech vendors such as Cloudflare, you know, based in the Bay Area and so on, but they don't really adopt that from a regulatory perspective. And then it's such a fragmented issue, right? For us to travel abroad, and like I go to Singapore without a wallet now, right? I carry my passport and my phone, and that's it, right? And I think we're learning how to deal with a lot of these other challenges with you know, digital first, right? You go to a place like Indonesia, that the vast majority of the population has a smartphone, right? They do everything. They deal with the government now. Digital India is another great example of you know, how they're dealing with societies that, you know, if you think in India, 86% of the society there lives in tier 3 cities, right? Which is like really poorly connected. Geographically, it's hard for them to travel into main cities and so on. But, you know, they're rolling that out at scale, right? And we see, you know, countries that should be doing a better job. And yes, we're privileged in Australia, but we see other countries that should be doing a better job and they're not, right? And I think we just need to sort of spread and sort of cross-pollinate a little bit from, you know, what should, you know, places like the US be doing? What could they learn from places like India, for example, right? And sort of make it the internet better for everyone, right?
Dr. Shabir, do you have some input here, particularly perhaps about the rights of all of these people that we're going to be getting all of these new wonderful toys working with?
Yes, I do. Interestingly, when we talk about these regulatory things and regulations policies, as a student of international relations, most of the time we tend to miss the human side of the picture, when, of course, these policies are there to regulate humans, but most of the time they miss the human side, and I'll explain here why and how. As we have established here that our region is most diverse region with some of the most developed and least developed economies. In this country, we have heard from this stage that a person doesn't go for years without carrying a wallet. And in this same region, we have people and we have countries, there are people with disabilities, they are not allowed to open bank accounts, much less to talk about using the e-facilities, much less to talk about carrying credit cards. So where do we go with these regulatory measures? And it's not just the technology that is stopping them. It's the regulatory measures that's stopping them. Even in my own country, 10 years back, we were not allowed as a person with vision impairment to carry credit cards. We had to fight with the state bank, a long fight. We have to convince them that these technologies, and they were all in the name of securing people with blindness. Well, one would have very choice words to say about that. We had to convince them. We had to convince them that this technology doesn't make us more insecure as you do by these regulations. So the point is that the regulations, so technology is evolving fast. The question is that is the regulations are evolving along with the technology too? I would say no with a capitals. I'm sorry if I offend someone, but
can I just add something that it's interesting that I think a lot of the people building the technology sometimes don't have disability in mind, right? Like we have a NDIA or NDIS, right? The National Disability Insurance Scheme is a customer of Cloudflare. We had to adapt our product because of the way they use our zero trust services, for example, to for the whole agency to access services, because everything was based on Face ID or anything that sort of you can see what you're doing, right, and not really interacting with other devices that already exist that will help authenticate someone with a disability, right? So it's good that we're being pushed to do that, and I think it was a very valuable lesson for us. And every single product we have now, we have that in mind with what are we catering for here, right? And what are what do we need to adapt to make sure that we're including everyone from a product development perspective, right?
Yes, exactly. And when we are talking about the product development, it's also that was one side of the regulation. I'm not saying that regulations are bad. On the other side, these are the regulations that prompt these companies, such as Apple and Dell and all those countries working in developed countries. Due to the regulations, they are bound to take care of the needs of the person with disabilities as well. Otherwise, they would not be allowed to come in the market. So on one hand, if policies hinder, on the other, they can enable people as well. We just need to pick that what and where do we as our policy makers and implementers want to stand.
I think this is such an important point. Being able to take on the role as developed economies who are focused and who have got regulations in this space around whether it's inclusivity, whether it's looking at privacy or cybersecurity. And it's incumbent on us, but also on the technologists who are then selling these products in other countries that may be less developed economies. That not because it's not something that is important to them, but because it is a question of priorities. The things that they're going to be asking for are going to be things that will deliver on the more fundamental rights that as we are, or the more fundamental needs that as we are doing that, we are also uplifting the capacity from bringing the greater commitment to rights as we do that. And that isn't in a preachy way. It's saying, we've learned this the hard way and you can have the benefit. And that's how we skip the digital divide rather than reinforce it.
I just want to take a little break and first of all, let everybody have a sip of water, should you so desire on the panel. I'm wondering what you're all thinking about this, ladies and gentlemen. Show of hands will do me to start with. Do you think all of these new wonderful technologies, these emerging technologies, these things that let's face it are coming at us without us wanting them or not, are they going to do anything to close the digital divide, to service community better? Who's in the yes camp? Raise your hand. Thank you, Bruce. I hope you're not the only one. Come on, hands up. Who's in the yes camp? Who's in the no camp? Oh dear, we've got a bit of work to do here.
And there's also a lot of undecided.
Yes. Who's doing their stock market reviews and their banking? Who's checking their emails? Oh, sorry. Have you got any questions that you would like to pose on those particular topics we've looked at today? If you would like, we have a standing microphone, should the urge take you to come and get our attention that way. To the left here, just below the clock, feel free to come there and we will take your questions, or you can raise your hand now and a friendly person, not me because I'm neither friendly nor a runner, will come to you with a microphone. Any questions for the panellists at this stage? Any comments?
Promise we don't bite.
Oh, all right. We're not going to bite. Yeah, I can't see why not really. Oh, sorry. All right. Well, obviously, we are making ourselves very, very clear, which is fine. I'm therefore. Well, I might run to you. Let me struggle across here. It's all right. Stretch.
I'd love to hear you've all spoken about the importance of this region capitalising on the diversity that we have, but also being more active in shaping how we address, I think, the challenge that Cheryl has put out. That's a choice. It's a fork in the road. These technologies can do, I think, have those benefits for communities, or we can see that we can reap some of the downsides in the way, say, that we have with social media, where arguably the technology markets were left with too much freedom. Could you talk a little bit about striking the balance in terms of advocating for the interests of development in the region, but also not going too far down the path of over-regulation to be too stifling, or to sort of hold back this region from capitalising on new technologies, on companies who are developing those new technologies actually operating from this region? What do we actually do to thread that needle?
Look, I think part of it is moving beyond this binary decision of, are we promoting cybersecurity, privacy and rights, or are we promoting innovation? I think we are very close to a point where if you deliver a product to market that isn't a product that builds in cybersecurity, privacy, safety by design, your product won't be considered to be a innovative product. It will be considered to be an incomplete product. And Brendan, you've heard me say that before. But I think this idea that innovation will be quashed because we are prioritizing rights is a false equation for us to be sitting with. And partly that's because when you look at the drivers in our region, yes, we absolutely have amazing internet uptake and penetration. We have more than half of the users of the internet in our region, but we still only have 67% of our region connected to the internet. From our region, we have 25% of the world's unicorns come from our region. Now, yes, 60% come from the US, but we still have far more than come from the EU. So when you think about the brain power that we have within our region, the innovative, the inner power of innovation, but also the challenges that we have to solve, I don't think we can solve those problems unless we are baking into those solutions security, privacy, and rights. And that needs to be considered as part of the solution, not as an add-on.
Fernando, please.
You know, I'll pick on the startup stat, right? So I think some of the challenges that we see and the reason why a lot of the number of startups coming out of the US is far greater than individual countries anywhere else is It's just that they're sort of, building technology that can be adopted in pretty much anywhere. We see startups in our world that pick those technologies and they innovate on top of that, right? And the interesting thing in the diversity of our region here, the problems are very different, right? And obviously, privacy is something that we have to go and I talk to a lot of regulators. I talk, to a lot of startups. I talk to a lot of government entities, a lot of companies in the private sector as well. And this is something that, privacy hasn't really been a strong point in Asia Pacific, right? And obviously there's a lot of countries that, have challenges with, government not allowing privacy to be a real thing. But we see the divide between innovation and privacy just being led by lack of education a lot of times, right? And I think more education into what that means, and because the technology is available to everyone today, right? And the cost of adoption of technology is getting lower and lower, right? But it's more of a, what should and shouldn't you do rather than, what can or you can't do, right? And I think it's up to us really to, people with a little bit of knowledge and understanding of, the potential, the downfall of lack of privacy, for example, to educate people on how to build secure products, how to build private products and so on, right? Like you look into, forms and every website, like a lot of the data, like why do you store that, right? Like we saw what happened with Optus here, right? And then a simple mistake with, like Optus, that someone got a production data set and put on a development API, ends up with 10 million records being leaked, or 10 million individuals with, potential issues, right?
Dr. Shabir, I'd like to ask you to also react to something that I know you have a particular interest in, as many of us in the disability sector have been saying for a very long time. Universal design is not just for us, it's for everybody. We heard there about the possibility of things being seen as incomplete product if they haven't taken cybersecurity and certain other aspects of design that is to benefit us all into account. What about this aspect of universal design? So it's actually easier for everyone to use, simpler for us all to deploy, and dare I say, safer.
Yes, you are right. And part of the answer lies in your very question as well, that universal design is not just for person with disabilities. It's often misperceived as when the discussion on universal design come in the hall, it's perceived that it's just for person with disabilities, and it's for their benefit as well. Whereas voiceover can be used for many other persons as well. For instance, Siri is the voice assistant, can be used by any other person. In the same way, a website which was built on a universal design, accessible for everyone, is equally and easily be used for any other person. So the discussion, and it's also a kind of a allegation by the developer side that it costs more. It costs more when you start retrofitting accessibility into the product. When you are designing, if you design accessible, when you are building, if you build accessible, it doesn't cost much. But yes, when you have erected a complete building, and now you want that from under this stage, an elevator should come up to take the speaker down, then of course there would be costs. So universal design, on one hand, it's for the benefit of everyone, and on the other hand, it's affordable when used from the design stage and not at the later stage.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Shabir. We have a hand up over recognition. Okay, over to you. Thank you, Julia Hammer.
Thanks, Cheryl, and thank you to the panel members for such an interesting presentation. You've commented on the differences in the uptake of emerging technologies that result from economic differences, from cultural differences, geographic. I wonder if you'd comment on generational differences, because my observation is that there's quite different use of technologies by young teenagers, by people in their 20s than perhaps by those of my generation who were actually around and even in the workforce when the internet was invented. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on generational differences.
Who's that grab first?
You know,
Sorry, Julie Hammer is my name. My apologies.
It's an interesting point, right? Because I think the adoption of technology, like things like, social media, for example. I'll use India again as an example. We're looking to, everyone who's got a smartphone in India. A lot of people, especially the older generation there, the only thing that they use is really, SMS calls and use the camera to scan a QR code whenever they need to pay for something, right? So the need to, if you go into any merchant now, there's a little QR code using PhonePe or any of the other UPI compliant payment systems there. Everyone knows what to do, right? And it hasn't been that much of a struggle for people to understand that. Now, you ask them to, send an email to someone, that's a bit of a stretch, right? You ask them to, be on Facebook or whatever, they're just not interested and they just don't know how to operate that. But the benefits of using, a smartphone for the very basic function of using the camera, everyone can do that, right? And I see, I'm from Brazil, and I see, exactly the same sort of adoption in Brazil as well. That the ease of use is not necessarily, you don't need to be a whiz to download a bunch of different apps, right? All you do is just open the camera, right?
Yeah, look, I think this is a really important point, both from a usability of for individuals and how they experience the internet and how they experience the world, right? Because so much of what we do is online. But the other part of this that is really important is that many of our decision makers, particularly in our region, are of a generation that didn't grow up with the internet, that don't understand these technologies, and yet we're looking to them to regulate these technologies. And that is, I think, all credit to the program with the parliamentary track that is happening in parallel to this IGF, because it is so absolutely vital that we upskill not just the technologists, but also the people who are making decisions around that work. And that's something that my team and I are also very much focused on and working on in Australia. And we hope to expand that work into the Asia Pacific as well. So it is absolutely vital. I would also say that the point about upskilling people is not just about upskilling people on technical issues. It's about upskilling people to ask the question about technology being made differently. We have been trained to accept the technology that we've been given, as opposed to say, okay, can the technology do this a different way? And so actually it's as much a cultural relearning of the way that we perceive technology as it is a technical understanding of these issues.
Dr. Shabir, I'm wondering, from what you've heard the other speakers and those interventions from the floor, whether we're getting to a point where it needs to be recognised that some form of early planning, early involvement of, dare I say, actual lived experience individuals, people perhaps with the necessary technical know-how of the things that are being designed. So not just building a new wonderful toy because it is a great idea and it's a niche market, but how can I build it to its simplest form, its most effective? It can be really complex behind the scenes, but how is the interface most useful? How is its activity best guided in that development phase? Would you like to say a few words about that?
Yes, thank you, Cheryl, for the question. And I would just remind you an often quoted statement, nothing about us without us, is a statement more often than not quoted in disability circles, by the disability circles as well. So it's true. And while we all see this happening there on the IGF, there is a parliamentary track, there is youth track, there are youth IGF. I am going to leave you all with the question that what sort of accessibility or disability forums we have on these, and at what stage are they? There are fellows programs. How many of them they have been made person with disabilities? There would be an IGF in 2023. As the coordinator of Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability, I'm happy to announce that we, with the support of Internet evangelist Windsurf and Google, are providing and enabling person with disabilities to go to IGF, participate in person, or to participate remotely. It's their choice. We cannot push people to say, okay, if you want to participate in the discussion, you have to be in person. Or if you want to participate, you cannot be in person. So Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability has a fellowship program. The deadline of that is today. Unfortunately, it is circulated, yes. And after that, we will be evaluating applications. And this program, I can say, is solely targeted for persons with disabilities. But when I say targeted for persons with disabilities, I'm not saying that we are excluding persons without disabilities, but they would have to really work for it, to show for it that their participation in the IGF would benefit persons with disabilities so that they would be considered then. So these kind of programs, they are really necessary. If you want people involvement, if you want to work on the youth, let the youth talk about themselves. Do not try to perceive or speak on their behalf. If you want to work on person with disabilities, let them say what is required. Do not perceive that this may be their requirement and this could be done or this could not be done. Same is the case with the design. Sometimes we think that these designs could be difficult. If you had given me an iPhone some 15 years back, I would have said, oh, what a maze is this. But today, the situation is different. So as we grow, as we learn, we adapt to the things and the environments.
Thank you, Dr. Shabir. Dr. Shabir, I'm going to leave the microphone with you very briefly because I'd like to hear from you what you think our future is like in Asia Pacific in terms of these emerging technologies. What do you see or what do you want to see for the future of these emerging technologies?
Well, what I want to see or what I see could be different things. And if you want an honest answer.
I want an honest answer.
Well, I want to see, so for instance, there are a number of tech developments going on. Every day we are seeing new technologies coming in the market. If not, every day there is a new app coming in the market, new website coming in the market. And more often than not, it's a stated fact, we did it. And G3 ICT also did a survey of 1 million websites all around the world. Just the home pages of those websites. And 97% of those were inaccessible. So what I would want is that 97% to see at least that they are accessible in this region. Well, what I see the things that they are moving in a positive direction. If I am sitting here today speaking to the audience, not just in this hall, but across the Asia Pacific region and across the world through the technology, and I'm holding a degree, PhD degree, it is all thanks to this technology. So I'm hopeful that things are improving and they would be better.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Fernando next. So Fernando, in closing remarks, what do you see, and anything you want to add in a very brief time, what do you see as the future from your perspective?
Look, I think you know, depending on the which side of the equation you're looking at, but we're always a step behind, right? So you know, sometimes you know we'll think about something really cool that we can do with tech. Someone will go and create that tech, and then we're like, oh, this is the problems that come with it, right? Same thing with cybersecurity, right? Talking about building secure products and so on. Like I see large organizations that have exactly the same problems that they had 20-something years ago when I was on the other side of the fence, right? So this is something that, you know, it's always going to be a cat and mouse game, depending on which way you're looking at. But, you know, we're learning, right? And I think, you know, when we talk specifically about emerging technologies, like, and I've been talking about AI and, you know, generative AI and so on for a little while now. Like, while, you know, we have this fear of, you know, AI taking people's jobs and so on, but I just think, you know, everyone's being more productive, right? We're learning what we need to do to prevent it from, you know, taking over the world. But, you know, technology is here to, technologists just build technology and then we figure out what we can and can't do with it later, right? And this is the biggest challenge that we have. But we are, with a rapid adoption of a lot of those, I think we're learning faster as well, and we're understanding what problems can come with it a lot earlier in the workflow as well.
Segue to Joanna.
Thank you. Look, one comment and then the future of the internet. I think what we haven't discussed on the panel today is whether or not everything we've been discussing is actually relevant to internet governance. Because, you know, when we think about internet governance is about the technical management of the internet. What we've been speaking about is emerging and critical technologies, which of course will shape our future. I think it's an absolute credit to the internet governance community, which is such a welcoming and inclusive community, that people are looking to bring these discussions about emerging technology into this community. But I do worry a little bit that as we do and expand the mandate of the IGF, we are diluting the focus on the core business of keeping the internet running and functioning. You know, the extraordinary work that ALDA do, that APrIGF, that .Asia does. They're barely topics of discussion in the IGF on the current agenda. So let's not take for granted the incredible work and how much everything depends on that. As for my predictions for the future of the internet, I think I'm going to go with 97% accessibility. Much faster, much cheaper internet. I think we will see much more use of the internet, particularly around the way that we work. I think we'll see incredible applications for travel as well. So thinking here about Tuvalu's efforts with the metaverse as one example. But I also hope that as we move more and more online, that we also value more our experiences offline. As it becomes cheaper to engage online and have these experiences, that our face-to-face experiences become a luxury item, something that we value more. So I'll leave that with you as a thought.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems to me that a couple of taglines can come out of this. One, of course, is the not about us without us. And I'm hearing a lot of better together from this as well. That if we do actually do a little more of this proactive work, not just in our own little silos, but across our region, it will benefit us all. And having been benefited by this fabulous set of panellists, I'd like you to put your hands together for all of them. Morning tea is outside these doors. Don't rush, because in the half hour, so at 11 o'clock local time, you will have a choice of 3 rooms to go back to. Please look to your programs. If you haven't downloaded your app, please do so. Decide what you're going to see and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, one and all. Bye for now.
Thank you.